Welcome to the Mom as Well podcast, where we are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here. Mama's Well. Yes, she is. Well, good morning. I don't know if it's morning where you are, but it's morning right here. And we have gone, we're in Texas, the Houston area, and we have gone from literally frozen to beautiful springtime. And I'm feeling it in my body, my energy. It's nice to look outside and see a blue sky. And today, it's good to have a blue sky because today we're going to talk about something that can leave us feeling like there's no blue sky around. And it's something that is very, very real and prevalent in foster care, and it's grief. And we grieve a lot of things. And I didn't know that in my early life. I didn't really know much about grief. And I became aware of it in 2011 when my mother passed away in just 4 months of illness. And so that was tough. And since then, I've recognized grief in my life that even prior to that I didn't know was grief. And so I want to spend some time on that today because I think it's very real. It's very deceptive. We don't always know that what we're going through is grief. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about that. And I have a really unique, I think, guest today. She has a wide range of perspective. And so before I let you see her, I want to tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Jennifer Crowe. She's been in social work for over 20 years. I want to say close to 25 years. She has the perspective of not only a caseworker who has been involved in, the removal of children, the placement into foster homes. She is also a foster parent for many children. She is the adoptive parent for children. And so she has a lot. She has a lot of perspective here. And there's even another perspective that I want her to share, very personal perspective. And so there's a lot of experience that she brings to the table, and she's done a lot of grieving herself. And so when we talked, I thought, you know what? I think this is a topic that is very, very, it's one of the hardest things, I think, as foster and adoptive parents that we go through. And I want to bring attention to it. I want to shine a light on it because I believe that the more awareness we bring around a topic, the better equipped we are to move through it. So that's what we're hoping to do. Just bring some awareness around this painful topic. And another cool thing before I get started, this is the social worker, caseworker, that I call her the stork for one of my daughters. And she showed up one evening very late, 10 o'clock, I believe, with my daughter Skyla. And so I will never forget her, ever. And so here you go. Jennifer Crowe, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad you're here. We tried to do this on Friday, but my eye was swollen shut.
Just in the timing.
So here we are. So Jennifer, besides the stork, the social worker, you have I want to hear about your personal life. Would you share a little bit about your story, how you got started in all of this, and then your family? So I've already let everybody know that, you have the social work perspective, you have the foster parent perspective, the adoptive parent perspective, and then there's another one that we're going to get into later. But tell us about your family.
So my husband and I have 4 children. Okay. 2 of them are our biological children, and then we have 2 adopted, and we have a granddaughter. Our oldest is about to be 27. Oh my goodness. And she has a 4-year-old. And then our son, who we adopted when he was 16, he's 20 and he's away at college. Then we have a 17-year-old. And we have our little one is 5, and we adopted her about 2.5 years old. And then my husband is a family therapist, so we kind of run the gamut in our household with the social worker, the family therapist, and I mean that has been helpful a lot. I would say, I mean, we have such a wide range of situations and children, and I mean aging from 5 to 27 or 26. Sorry, Alexis. So it can be really loud. I mean, we definitely have a loud family, and it can be messy.
Yeah.
But I do know that our family and our kids all enjoy being together. That is something, as hard as it can be sometimes, the kids do have each other's back. They support one another. So it's actually been, as hard as it can be sometimes, it's been really beautiful to watch also. My husband and I met at Child Protective Services many, many years ago.
Okay.
We were both social workers. We never thought that we would get into, foster and adopting. One interesting fact is we've had probably, I think, 10 or 11 kiddos throughout our home, ranging from newborns to teenagers. Some family, just different situations, but we've only been licensed to do one child, which is the one our son who we adopted. So we've just kind of opened our homes to those in need.
Okay. So like with a family-based service case, or just someone reaches out and says, could you help us?
Just
like kind of like that?
Just somebody who's reached out, or we've heard about them and we've just said, well, sure, we've got extra space, we've got extra room.
Wow.
So it's definitely not where we thought we were going to go. God kind of just led us in that direction, and it just evolved. But it came from, we wanted to grow our family. We struggled with, infertility, and we suffered 4 miscarriages. And we were both out of Child Protective Services by then, and we had freshly moved to Texas, and we were, grieving the loss of 4 babies. And then we thought, well, maybe we grow our family through adoption. We truly had no idea but we felt like that's what we were supposed to do. We felt like that's where we were being led. So unexpectedly, we met a young girl through our church, and we walked her through her pregnancy for about 7 months. And when that baby came, she said, no, I'm not doing it. Some hurtful things came from her. And so we had one more. And that was at that point, that was about 5 losses for our family.
Wow.
And that was it was hard. That was a rough year. Then from that point on, my daughter met a friend, and she was just a teenager, and she had 2 beautiful twins, and they started, we were like, she needed help, and so they started with us in our home, and it just kind of snowballed, and we had some nieces and nephews who in different situations stayed with us, and then a young girl from college came in, and she stayed with us off and on for a few years, and it's just kind of snowballed into that. And finally we were like, we still felt like we were supposed to grow our family, but we were like, we're getting older. How's that going to look?
Yeah.
But we totally knew that God was pushing us into adoption, but I still thought infants. So after all of these kids have come and gone, we finally were like, we're going to do it. We're going to go get our license. And so we did that. And then our son at the time was 14 and a half, and his picture pops up, and I was like, that's our son. Like,
wow.
That's our son. And my husband's like, you said infants.
Yeah. You're like, no.
We said not, we didn't know we were going to do a teenager. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. That's our son. And so after that, he came to live with us. And so that's kind of how it started. And then our youngest a family friend reached out and said, we need help. We have these 3 littles coming into our home, and, you know, could you help us? And we said, sure, we'll take the newborn, you know, if we can help out for a while. 5 years later, here we still are,
Yeah.
but she's adopted.
Yeah.
And so it was never, it's just crazy how it all worked out. Like we thought for sure, one quick story, we were getting ready to sell our first home here in Texas, and it was just a tiny little home. And I'm showing the realtor around, and we get to the room that was this god-awful blue. I look back and think, what did I do? And I said, well, this room was supposed to be the nursery, you know, and then all of a sudden it just hit me, and I was like, tears streaming down my face. I don't know this woman, and I am just sitting there, and all of a sudden I was like, I could just hear, I did fill this room. Think of all the kids that I filled this room with. And had I not gone through, you know, my husband and I had not gone through all of that loss that led us to, I think at that time it was like 8 children, 7 or 8 children had been in that particular room.
Wow.
And from various situations, just different situations that needed help. And I just sobbing, you know, talking to this stranger, and I just realized, you know, sometimes we don't know what is going to lead us to the next step. And even though we grieved, look at who came in the door at the right time, who needed help.
Right.
So
that's a great point. Yeah. You know, going back, you said it, and I know a lot of time has passed and you've done a lot of processing, but that, you know, the infertility piece, like I think that is often connected with foster and adoptive parents. Because, first of all, I have not myself experienced that infertility piece. I know when I first, you know, got married, it was a thought in my mind because one of my best friends had experienced it or was in the process of experiencing it, and very painful, very, very painful. And so I see that sometimes with foster and adoptive parents. They are looking to build your family, and yet building your family, it's like there's these 2 worlds, you know, because foster and adoptive parents, we all know in our heads intellectually that the goal is that we are just temporary. We are filling a gap, right, for these parents to get back on their feet, to do the hard work, to move past addiction, to move past abuse, neglect, whatever's going on. We hope that they get help and training, but just the truth of the matter is that that's rarely the case that happens, but it does, or a family member steps in and fills that gap. And so you have this world where you know that's the goal, you're trying to move this family and to stay together, but then over the other part of your heart's going, I want that child to be mine.
Right.
So not only are you have the grief, it's just conflicting, isn't it?
Yes, it's very conflicting.
Yeah.
Especially when you're watching, like in our situation, we worked very closely with a lot of the birth parents, and because I didn't have an agency, you know, coming in between.
Right.
And so there was that direct contact with the moms or the dads, and you're cheering them on, but I think where the conflict comes in too is if they're not moving into the right direction and they're still stuck in their cycle of very poor choices or harmful choices. Yeah. That's where, you know, you have to really put yourself in the place of, like for us, what is the best thing for the child? You know, you want to love on these parents and you want to pour your heart and soul into them, but ultimately it's the child's safety first, you know. But it is conflicting because a lot of the families we've worked with, and you know, especially as a caseworker, going back to that, a lot of the families we work with, they do want to grow their family, and sometimes this is the most plausible way to do it. But you're trying as a caseworker to prepare them for heartache that may come, or you know, and that's the hard part
Yeah.
about being the caseworker, is because you're cheering on the foster family, but you're also cheering on the birth parent. And then
Yeah.
you have this child in between that
Yeah.
is kind of like being torn.
The gifts and the gaps.
Yes.
This is a perfect example of that. It's like, you know, it wouldn't even exist if there wasn't this tremendous gap. And then the gift, you know, obviously it's the child, but there's so much more, you know, that we learn about ourselves in this messy journey.
Yes.
I think that being aware of that grief that you experience through infertility can help. You know, I think being aware of grief, I think that's pretty much all there is. That's the first step anyway, right? Being
Right.
aware that you are grieving, and anyway, yeah. I mean, there's no answers to that, right?
No.
Yeah, and then, you know, the other piece you're talking about when you have a child and, you know, there wasn't a caseworker or a judge or attorneys, they weren't all mixed into some of your cases, right?
Correct.
But, I mean, this is how we sit as foster parents. Like, our hands are just behind our back, and you are firsthand witnessing so much of it, but your voice matters so little.
Correct.
That is hard.
Yes. And I think so being a social worker and watching that, and I know, you know, some haven't had great experiences with their social workers and some have had great social workers. I think from myself and from my husband, you know, our perspective was, you know, trying to do the best that we could for the child, and encouraging both sides. But I look at, even from a social worker, a lot of the social workers grieve it too. You know, they don't want to call up and say, I'm sorry, this child you've had for, you know, 18 months has to go home. They don't necessarily want to do that either, but their hands are tied also. So sometimes it's not necessarily always the caseworker's fault, you know. It's just the way the system played out, and we all know the system is not perfect. And it can be very frustrating. And I just remember in some of my cases, just getting in the car and just crying, like, this is not the best situation, but I don't have a choice, you know. And you can fight and you can push and you can bang on as many doors as possible, but from the caseworker's point of view, it's not always going to happen the way you want it to happen either. So there's that perspective also, but trying to prepare, you're right, a foster family does not have a lot of voice in this system. And it's frustrating. They have to, you know, they're not told a lot. For privacy reasons. I wish there was more contact with birth families and foster families. I think that would ease some of the pain, the unknown. You know, even from the birth parent side, they don't always know the foster parent, and they're just assuming the worst, you know. And if we could put more of that together, it might ease some of the pain or the grief. I
totally agree with that. Yeah.
So,
and sometimes that's not possible because we have safety issues
correct.
But thankfully, in my case that you were involved in, there was a lot of contact with, you know, supervised contact.
Yes.
But very, very beneficial in easing that fear factor for her, for birth mom, I think. I think she would say that. So as foster parent, you know, many are coming in with this, you know, getting back to that grief piece. You were the caseworker who called me in, let's see, 2015, our very first placement. We had a little girl, maybe like we got her when she was maybe like 8 weeks old, 6 weeks old, something like that. And we were told that this is a possible adoption, even though our paperwork, I remember having the conversation, our paperwork says foster only. I remember the head of the agency calling and saying, you know, I'm not sure if we should place her here. This looks like maybe an adoption. And I said, you make that decision.
Right.
You know, I can't commit to any of, I'm only committing to yes on she may come here.
Yes.
You know, and so I want to get into a little bit of this because a lot had happened. Right before we got that call, that was in July, I believe. In April, my dad committed suicide. And I've never said this on the podcast, but I was grieving terribly. I was grieving. Our whole family was grieving. It was, my husband and I describe it as there was just this super, and my body's reacting right now. I can feel a little shaking in my body. I'm learning to recognize those things, but just a dark, dark cloud. You know, we were very worried about our children, our at that time, teen and preteen boys. Very, you know, a rough time anyway for kids, puberty and all that kind of stuff. So we were really worried, and there was a lot of prayer when we got that call. I mean, a lot of prayer and conversation in our family. And I remember it was this, after hours of contemplating, I remember saying, all of us saying, we're supposed to say yes. Like, we don't know what this looks like. And I remember telling, it might not have been you, somebody at the agency, and I said, we feel like we're supposed to say yes to this, but I need to know. And this is another thing I think that foster parents really struggle with is I said, I need to know if this becomes something detrimental to my own family, to my boys,
Right.
to myself, to my husband, like, I need you to come and get this baby. And that was hard to say because I was worried. Are they, you know, what does this mean? What is this going to look like? But I knew I had to say that. And it gave me the peace to say yes. And so, and of course the lady said, I don't think it was you, I can't remember who it was, but she said yes. She understood the situation. She said yes. The craziest thing, that baby we grieved, maybe we grieved together. I don't know what happened, but this dark cloud in our home, it just lifted. I mean, all of our efforts had just been poured inside where they should have been. And then all of a sudden, there's this little newborn baby girl, and my boys and my husband and myself, we were all just like, she needs us, you know? And so all of a sudden, this inward became this outward, and it was so healing. And we were so bonded. I mean, almost instantly.
Yes.
And then, 2.5 months later, it was my birthday weekend. I remember getting the call. And you say, it was a Friday, and you said, Monday, she's going to go back. Oh.
I had to fight for that 3 days.
Thank you, because we grieved. And my husband and I, in particular, whatever, was very, very painful. And I remember I had birthday plans that weekend with girls, and I canceled everything. And I said, I'm staying home. And we're basically, I think we probably held her for the next 3 days solid. And but I want to keep going with this story because this was a really cool. That morning, Monday morning, I sat in the chair. I have a swivel chair in my living room, and I looked out the back window as I was holding her. And my husband, I used to carry her in a wrap, wrapped around me really tight. And my husband said, "Are you going to give her the wrap? Are you going to give her the what do we need to gather here?" And I said, "No, not giving her the wrap. That's her and I. That's our wrap." And but I sat there in that chair a little bit longer, and I was probably praying, although it wasn't like a conscious prayer. It was just kind of like a, "Help me, God," you know. And but something switched in my brain, in my heart, in my body, and I turned around and I knew what I needed to do. And I said, "Kyle, get in here. I know what we're going to do. Not only I'm going to give her that wrap, but we're going to gather some more things. We're going to make a schedule. We're going to write down the schedule of what this baby's been doing, and we're going to stop by your favorite barbecue place that's on the way down to that agency, and we're going to have a baby shower. We're going to get food, and we're going to send him home with food, and man, like I'm still shaking because I can feel all that in my body. But that felt so good. That felt so good. And we I don't know if this is normal, but we buckled her in the car seat after talking to Mom and sharing all this information. And we helped her get buckled in her car seat. And Kyle and I walked back up to that building, and we were holding hands. And it was like we just said to each other, we could do this 100 more times. It felt good. And I don't know that situation. I don't really know, but that was what we went through. And it was a beautiful process, I think, of realizing that we had done our job, and that baby was going to go home and, hopefully do well. And I think we never really could get any more contact after that. I think you tried. But anyway, some songs came out of that. Kyle's got some songs, and I'll share those in the show notes too. But it's hard to let go, even after just, 2.5 months.
Yeah. Well, and watching you guys process that and, the holding on to everything and then finally feeling the need to release it, and that how freeing that was for you, it was a beautiful process to watch you guys walk through and talk out. You talked a lot about it, and and the phone calls and the back and forth and how you're going to do it, and I'm not doing it, I am doing it.
First time foster parent. That's a hard one.
No, it was beautiful to watch you get to that moment, and I think that was an important moment for you that opened it up. And you said you only wanted to foster, and so we kind of laugh about that. But
after 2 adoptions,
right?
Yeah. So I know that you've had that on a much grander scale. That was the other ones that we've had in our home. When they started, I knew they were short term. They were like, okay, these are going to, these children are going to go to this particular adoptive parent. This is the way it's going to happen. She was the one that I really, experienced that. But like I said, it was a very short term, but it was very intense. I think, it doesn't have to be a long-term placement for you to grieve the loss, but you have had that. And will you kind of share a little bit about how that's impacted your life? I mean, you've had kids. I know Carly was a big one. So
Carly was probably the hardest. Like I said, she came in through friends of ours, and so we were a small, community. Obviously, my work at Child Protective Services and then in private agencies kind of set me up to kind of know how the system worked. She was never in custody. And sometimes that's even harder because we had kind of a CPS worker that was off to the side. And because I knew CPS, it was really difficult because I knew what should be happening but wasn't happening. So we had Carly for it was about 11 months. And our friends, were walking it out with us and siblings. And when we got the call that she had to go home, we fought it with everything we had and went up as high as we could possibly go. She was such a joy. I mean, it was a hard situation. We did our own visits. We, like I said, we really had no CPS involvement at all. They were way on the outskirts of all this. So we knew, because we were the only ones doing the visits, and we knew how difficult it was. And we knew it wasn't a safe place. It wasn't any different than it had been when they were removed. And so when we got the call to send her home, I mean, she was almost 1 year old at that point. And again, our family had lost, five children. And so our kids grieved it. I think the unknown and believing that there really was a dangerous component to it made it more difficult. Our blessing in it was we did get to see her a couple of different times, but that first probably 6 weeks we had to send her back, and we sent her back with everything. I was giving instructions. I gave a rap. I mean, I gave everything back, all of her favorites. And we, but we had worked hard on building a relationship as best as we could with the parents. And when we dropped her off, it was the most heart-wrenching day. I mean, I thought I had grieved a lot before, but this one, she just looked at me like, where are you going? Why are you leaving me here? And watching my son, who at the time was about 12, he would just randomly come into my room, with tears streaming down his face and be like, Mom, I miss her. And that first month was the hardest. We got to see her once, and that you'd think that was an easy time, and it wasn't. Yeah. Watching, it was like there was no life in her eyes. It was just, she was mad at me. She wouldn't come to me. She'd go to my daughter and let her hold her throughout the visit, but not me. And that was hard. And then it probably took 6-8 weeks of despondency. I wouldn't say, just sadness, this overwhelming sadness that she was gone with me. Yeah. And my son, and my daughter and husband also. But I truly remember my son and I just crying together at different random times. And then after about the second month, going into the third, then I felt like, okay, there's a little bit of light. We are hearing from them. We occasionally have seen them. Okay, I can function now. Like, I got out of bed because I had children. I had to go to work. But the grief was real, and just random, just crying, or didn't feel anything, like you just barely could function throughout your day. And then when we finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I can get through a day without crying. I can, I'm thinking about her, or little things will remind me, but I'm okay. And then once we finally were like, she's going to be okay, they're keeping in contact at a minimal, but they're keeping in contact. 3 months in, birth dad called back and said, I need help. They're not in a good place, and I need to protect them. And you better believe we all jumped in the car at 11 o'clock at night and went and got those
because
kids.
There were siblings. You just only had one of them. Is
Correct.
That right? Okay.
Yes. So we both families went. And it doesn't mean it wasn't hard from that point on. And our situation turned out well. And we did get that phone call back. And I do attest that to having a healthy relationship, as healthy as it could be, with the birth dad. And then we ended up being able to, after a long fight, we did adopt her at 2.5 years old. But those 3 months, watching the stages, we didn't go through all those stages of grief, but definitely, the depression, the isolation, the anger. I never was in denial, but there was
Sounds
definitely...
like you moved into acceptance, though.
Acceptance, yes. That was, I think, finally by 6 or 8 weeks, there was the acceptance of this is what it's going to be, and I'm going to do my best to know her and to still pour my love into this family because it's the only thing I can do. Yeah. And so that turned out well for us, but you could watch that grief cycle.
Yeah. Grief is tricky. It's like sneaky. And I said this when my mom passed away, because I was super angry at a particular person who happened to be my best friend. I couldn't figure it out. I was so angry at myself for being angry at her. And so let's just, while we're here, let's just talk. And I don't have them memorized, but there's denial. And what I learned about these steps is you don't necessarily experience these in order.
No.
And they can come and go and ebb and flow, and you come back to one and you pick one up, and that's okay. Like the whole thing. And it can take years. Yes. To process. But the anger, definitely, I thankfully, my best friend and I, she was so loving and patient and nurturing and accepting. And she had to grieve because she had to let me go, you know, but we're back. Thank goodness. But, you know, the denial one, you mentioned that, and that is one, that I was like, what does that look like? And I wrote something down. I want to see what I wrote down because I thought it was, well, I guess it's just, this can't be happening to me. You know, I guess that's kind of it. But I got confused for a second. That's not the one I was wondering about. Bargaining. Did you mention that?
I didn't.
Okay. That's the one I was like, well, how do we do bargaining?
Right.
You know? And I started thinking about bargaining, and I started thinking when my mom got sick, I think this might be what bargaining looks like. Well, if I do this, this won't happen again. It's kind of like, it was like, basically, what am I going to do to control this? I think, I mean, I'm sure bargaining looks different for a whole bunch of different people, but that's one of the ways that bargaining showed up for me. It's like, oh, I'm going to eat a clean diet. I'm going to juice every meal for the next, you know, like whatever it was, I was just basically saying, if I can control this, that won't happen to me again, you know? And that, boy, my husband can attest to that, like how I go in and out of those pieces of control. But I'm sure does that ring a bell in anything that when you think about foster care and adoption, that stage of grief?
I think in the last little guy we had in our home, there was definitely that, trying to control it. Well, that can't happen that way. So you push every door that you can to make it happen, because you do feel out of control, because you have, especially when you don't have an agency involved, you've got all of everything is just almost spiraling. Sometimes you feel like out of control. And so you want to control something, because there's so much anxiety and so much angst, and you know, in human nature, you can't control someone else. And so I would try to, you know, bang down doors and, well, no, this can't possibly happen, so we push it this way. And, you know, because you don't want to walk through the grief that you've already experienced with some of the other situations we had. And I was like, I am not walking through that again. And of course, you can't control it.
No. Let's just,
Bargaining
while we're here on
doesn't
those, I'm going to, I jotted I printed something else to help us remember, but the stages of grief, denial. And again, they're experienced. This is not an order that has to be experienced this way. Everybody does it different from what I've read. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I would think we could even go in and out of acceptance. You know, we could come to a place of acceptance, kind of like you did. Okay, they're going to be okay. And then you get a phone call or you see something, you're like, back to denial or back to bargaining or whatever. So denial, this is just an example. This can't be happening to me. I think that's pretty easy to see. Anger, why is this happening? And here's the biggie. Who is to blame? See, that's what I was, who is to blame? You know?
Yes.
Bargaining, make this not happen. And in return, I'll do this. You know, I'll do this. Depression, I'm too sad to do anything. And then acceptance, I'm at peace with what happened. I don't think these are anything we need to memorize. I think they're something that we need to be aware of.
Correct.
And just...
So when you're walking through it, and all of a sudden, you're like, why am I so angry right now? Or why am I so sad today? Or, you know, or when I think knowing those things is going to help you walk it through. Be more aware of why you're doing what you're doing, or why you're feeling what you're feeling. And that goes, you know, that goes for some of our kids too, you know? So when you're talking about kids from trauma, I've had to really step back and go, why is she acting like this? Or even my teenage son, you know, there's certain things that he does that I get so frustrated with. And then all of a sudden I realize, oh, that's where that came from, you know, because they're grieving and they don't even know why.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're grieving. They don't know why they're responding the way they are either. And so I think that list is also very helpful in looking at our own children, who've walked through grief.
Yeah. I think growing up like I did, and many people my age, I think, could possibly say the same thing, but my parents were not really aware of the value of accepting, because what we're talking about here is all negative feelings, right? Anger, sadness, depression even. I mean, denial. All these things are very negative feelings. And the tendency when your child is struggling is to cheer them up. It's my own child's tendency to cheer herself up or to cheer. She doesn't want to be with that sad. So if her little sister starts to get sad, she'll immediately go to, look at this, try to cheer her up, right? And which is a beautiful quality. It's coming from a place of love and concern. But I think it's important that we don't jump over that sadness or that anger or whatever and allow them the space. And I'm learning this all in my latter years, allowing them that space to process those feelings, to feel those feelings,
Right.
but not push them. I don't need to say, aren't you sad? You should feel sad. That's not what I'm saying. Is when I recognize it. One time I remember leaving a visitation and my daughter, the older one, was looking out the window. She was probably 5 at the time, and just looking in the direction of where her birth mother had gotten on a bus and gone off, and she just looked hollow and sad. And I was able to say, you feel sad, and give her words for what she was feeling.
Yes.
And then I thankfully had the wherewithal to say, it's okay to be sad. And that was really all she needed. And she just experienced sad, and
that was good.
I had to drive. And so, it was good.
Yeah.
It was hard. It doesn't feel good.
No.
To feel our children we take it. We feel it too.
Yeah.
And the real hard one for me is anger. When they're angry, because who are they going to lash out at?
Oh, us.
Raise our hands. Us. That doesn't feel good.
No.
That hurts.
Yep.
And I can get angry back.
Yeah.
And obviously we do. So
I think it's hard. Like with our oldest son, he's 20 now. I was just saying to him this past weekend that, he doesn't allow himself the emotions. He's never quiet. He has to have music going, TV on. There always has to be noise in his head. And we've had conversations over the last couple of years of sometimes you just need that quiet spot. And I said, I think you're afraid to feel. You're afraid to have the emotions. And he does not like me telling him what his emotion is, which my family loves to tell me. I will tell them all the time, you must be feeling this. And so I've had to learn not to tell him how he's feeling, but at the same time, he doesn't allow himself the quiet spot, the quiet moments to feel. And so we've had to, walk through that. And I think that's more probably going with teenagers, maybe people are raising. And
so because you have a husband who is a therapist, who works with adolescents and preteens, and by the way, we're going to put his information because he sees people virtually, which is amazing. That's one gift from COVID, right? We've all learned how to do things virtually.
Yes.
So we'll put that in the show notes. But how have you? Because I think that you guys would be well equipped in your home. I know it's harder when it's your child.
Yes.
It's different. It's like when trying to teach my child how to read when I'm an excellent reading teacher.
Yes.
I have a degree in this, but your own child is different. So tell me some of the ways, and I'm putting you on the spot, but how have you guys processed that? Because that's probably very common. They don't want to talk it. My daughter doesn't. She doesn't want to be told that.
Right.
But anyway, you tell me.
Well, I would say it was more that, yes, it is hard when you know all the things and you're trying to do it in your own house, right? I would say my husband and I have the conversations more. Like he'll teach me, give him the space, or stop putting the words into his mouth. This is how you would open a conversation. read his maybe his actions and how he's responding to something. So my husband's been able to teach me how to step back and read the signs better. You know, it's hard because our oldest has a different relationship with Mark. And so Mark can't necessarily use all of his therapy tools on him. He does. And he tries to give him that space that he needs, and they have a good relationship. It's just different that, you know, he's not going to be in counseling mode with him.
And he doesn't want him to be.
And he doesn't want to be. And he doesn't want to be. So
my kids don't even want me to be, and I'm not a therapist.
No, right? And so I think it's more of, we use some of the therapy techniques talking to one another, and then quietly use them with the children.
Good.
With with our oldest Jacoby or our youngest Carly, and all in between. Because there's pain and messiness in this family for sure. So I think even though he knows it, it's probably more behind the scenes, our conversations. Walking through maybe the anger or the frustration, and because I want to shake it out of him. I want, have a feeling, have emotions, and my husband kind of keeping me more balanced. So that's probably more
maybe
how we're
trusting
walking
the
it.
process, and Mark is trusting the process that Jacoby is going to process.
Yes.
As it's time for him to process.
Yes. So he's keeping me, breathe, just take a deep breath, walk it through like this. And so I don't know, I don't have really pointers on that regard, but it's definitely, I think as parents and as a couple, you have to be on the same page.
Oh, that's a really good point here.
Yes, so you have to be on the same page going into it, walking through it, and of course we don't always agree on it, or we'll come back around to it, but I think walking it through behind closed doors and talking it through and is vital to being successful parents to our kids. And so I think that's why a lot of our, I have big emotions. My friends will laugh because they know that. So I have big emotions, and sometimes I have to have my husband, say, take a step back. And so that puts us on the same page.
My husband's running sound, and he's probably going, yeah, sounds familiar. Step back. Yeah. Take a deep breath. De-escalate.
Don't engage.
Don't
engage.
That is
his favorite word.
Don't engage.
Or 2 words. Don't engage.
That's good.
Because it riles me. If I get riled up, he's like, don't engage. And then walk away.
Realizing our what's it called? Dysregulation.
Yes.
Quick enough.
Right.
Quickly.
Yes.
Recognize my dysregulation. That's really good. And someone told me, or I don't know where I got it, years ago, definitely in my first round of parenting, that, 2 things. When mom changes, so do her children. And then more is caught than taught. Because the teacher in me wants to teach. Wants to teach, wants to instruct, wants to inform, wants to educate. That is not the best tool for my toolbox in these times. So, man, this is such a learning process. And another, that's from my old parenting, that's my old, what do I call it? My first round of parenting, those 2 things. But for my new round, this new round I call, the phrase that goes along with this is practice. Like everything is a practice. So I'm learning to practice.
Yes.
Sometimes, I practice really well, and sometimes I don't. But just sitting back and trusting, like Mark says, trusting that Jacoby is learning this through us. Like, because we're saying out loud,
right?
I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling dysregulated. Whatever. They're probably catching on.
Yeah, I see growth.
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely seen growth over the last couple of years. Growth in myself, growth in him. Just I'm like you just said, I'm a different parent than I was for the first 2. And I think some of that is also the grief we were walking through. You know, that creates a different way of parenting also.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you realize, wow, why was I so angry all the time? Or, why did it come out? And then you realize that was probably grief. I mean, we suffered a lot of loss.
Right.
And my kids were still young.
Right.
And so I do think that it's a new way of parenting, and we've learned what's important, what's not, how to listen more, read signs, read body language, like all of that comes with it.
I want to talk about one more area of grief, and I don't want to go on if there's anything I think if you've been a foster parent, if you've had one placement, you get what we're talking about. I mean, it's just, it's excruciating. And even the thought of it is excruciating. Here's something people always tell us as foster parents, and we talked about this on the phone, but I just don't know how you do it. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't give them back. I mean, this happens all the time. And there's some foster parents that makes them angry, right?
Yeah.
Because they're like, what do you think But for me, what I think people are saying is, wow, like, I can't believe you do that. But the truth of the matter is, it's hard. I mean, it is hard. And we are all, if you're doing this like you intend to do it, like you want to do it, like it's helpful, is that you're loving with everything you have,
Right.
authentically. And so when their location changes, when they go back, when they move to another home or whatever, you're gonna hurt. You're gonna hurt. But I'll tell you,
Deeply.
I've grieved some big things in my life, and moving through that process has really shaped me in a really amazing way. And so nobody wants to experience loss, but there is a beautiful gift in moving through it.
Yes.
And so I just, I guess I just want to say that. But there's another thing. Do you have anything else? I don't want to jabber on. You got something else in your that needs to come out?
No, I don't think so. I think
There's another thing then. I think I don't remember. I think we've talked about this, but one other thing that I've grieved, because I'm about to turn 50 this year. And so my friends, I saw a friend Friday night. She came to one of Kyle's shows that I had, very close friend of mine. We walked through all my pregnancies with. We used to get together multiple times a week, not just her. There was about 4 or 5 of us.
Okay.
And we went to church together. I mean, we did life together. When we got together, we brought pack and plays, and we would have a pack and play in every bathroom and every bedroom, because all our babies needed, while they slept, we did scrapbooking and chit-chatted and sat by the pool or whatever we were doing.
Right.
I mean, like, we were joined at the hip during this time of, loneliness was not something that I had to experience much of in my first round of parenting, because I had this great group of friends.
Yeah, I agree.
Whew, haven't had it in this. I mean, I still have great friends, but the difference, not a problem, it's a difference, is that my friends, their kids are getting married, like mine. Their kids are moving off to college, like mine. Their kids are at high school track meets and football games and volleyball games and basketball games that we drive all over the state of Texas to attend and sit in stands for hours. That's like not a super easy path for 2 children that have experienced trauma and who are needing to be carried and diapers changed, and it's been challenging. I have grieved. Here I'm getting to the point. I have grieved community.
Yes.
To do this along. I've missed out on things with my dearest friends. Let's go to coffee. Let's do girls' night. Let's do this. I mean, I guess I'm still grieving it because I've grieved that, and my friends have been amazing to me. But have you experienced that as well?
Oh, certainly. I think you do, because in essence, we're starting over, right? We both have little young ones, and you think, oh, you're right. Everybody, all of our friends, most of my friends were, becoming empty nesters. And I've had to just, I think in the beginning I probably fought it more. Like, why is this happening? I'm lonely. I can't do what I used to. You know, did we hear correctly? Were we supposed to go down this journey? You know, and you second guess yourself and all of that. I mean, and for me, I would feel selfish then and be like, no, you know, but you have to allow yourself to walk through those feelings again, the feelings, and realize, no, this is what we're called to do. And those are, you know, yes, I'm lonely. But those are temporary things. But sure, I mean, I didn't have a huge community when Carly came in. I had a very small community. You have people that don't understand, like you were saying, they don't understand how you do it. They don't understand why you do it. And that's okay. But in the beginning, I was like, why doesn't anybody understand this? Like, I don't have a choice, you know, because that's the other favorite thing, or non-favorite thing I would hear is, well, you asked to do this, you know, and it's like, no, I didn't ask to do it. I didn't imagine it. It's what we were called to do. And we just said yes, you know, and I've had to really just step back and rely on God to just walk us through that and to teach me it's okay. And now I look at my community and it's strengthened again, you know, and I have this larger community of family and friends that have come around me. And it's still not a huge group. And it's okay that other people don't understand why Mark and I do this or how we do it. I'm not offended when people say, oh, I just couldn't do it. I'm not offended by that comment. I don't need the praise, that's for sure. I don't do this for praise because this is not an easy life. And like you said, I mean, we had athletes. I mean, all my older kids are in all the athletics and you're like, you know, I can just strap the baby on and we'll be fine. And then all of a sudden you've got a child who's raging in the background and you might have to miss out on that sporting event or you can't go to this family function because it's too overwhelming. It's sensory overload and all of that. And there are times where you grieve it and you go, but that's not fair. I want to do it this way. I think this year we realized, wait a minute, we don't have to do things the way they've always been done.
That's so good. That's so good. We don't always have to do things the way they've always been done.
No.
So good.
I think I need to put that on my bathroom mirror.
Creating new normals, right?
Yes. And it hit me because over the holidays, my friend was like, I still don't understand why you're doing the holiday this way. And I thought about it the next day and I was like, why are we still doing it this way? She's, our daughter's miserable. It's too much. And so finally we just had to go, we took this responsibility on. We love our daughter. We have to do what's best for her. And it's not hurting any of the other children. And not everybody may agree with it. And some may not like the new way we have to do things, but I'm parenting from a whole new perspective. But I stomped my feet a lot in the beginning. And, through my little tantrums, but now that we have a group of friends who also, we're all kind of intermixed and intermingled with our siblings and raising these siblings together in different families.
That's really nice.
That's our support group. And it's taken us many years, but that is now us four families can really relate to one another.
That's beautiful. And we have a similar story. I mean, I'm not going to tell the story, but we have a friend that's raising one of our daughters' half siblings, and they live in our neighborhood. Even it's very nice. It's just a group that can understand each other,
the loss, the grief, the anger, the unknown, the unexpected, and
the trauma and the behaviors.
And the behaviors.
You know, that's a biggie.
Yes.
Because that you can feel really judged at times. Like, you do not know what you're doing. You're right. I don't.
Right?
But I'm making it up as I go along.
But when you have you have a couple of people who are walking it out. And I think that's why the foster and adopt, and that's definitely one thing I wasn't expecting to talk about, but surrounding yourself with other foster and adopt families is crucial. Find somebody who's going to understand. Or like for us, we had we had a family come in to help us with our last little one. And they had no idea they were going to end up adopting this child, but they came in and they jumped into it with us, you know? So find your people, find your foster and adopt community, even if it's only one other person, because there's a lot of times, like, I should know what I'm doing. I'm a social worker. My husband's a therapist. And there's still days when you're in the midst of a difficult time. I can call 2 or 3 other people and say, what do I do?
Yeah.
And then they'll tell you something. And you're like, oh, I knew that.
Yeah.
I just needed to be reminded,
Right.
you know, from all the different trainings, and maybe something worked with their child. And so that I would highly encourage.
Yeah.
And then
I
when
agree.
there is loss, or there is a grieving process, or, you know, anger or anything that you're experiencing, they've experienced it
Right.
too. So I don't think you have to have a giant community, but you
Right.
definitely have to have other people who understand you.
I totally agree, as with anything. Well, Jennifer, like, I feel like we could have a part 2 to this, you know, and so we might do that. We need you to come back and do a part 2, but, in wrapping this all up, I think if I could say what I've heard you say, what I've heard myself say, you know, just kind of processing what I would want to say about grief, I think one of the first things is to be aware. It hit me out of nowhere when I first recognized it. And then looking back, I can see how even in my childhood, I was grieving things that I didn't even know what it was. And so I think just being aware of grief, being aware of the grieving, the stages of grief, because if you know them, you can quickly affirm them. And so one real quick, just to kind of wrap things up, I think important things, let's just real quick throw out a few important things that as just know that if you're a foster adoptive parent, you're going to grieve.
Yes.
Just know that. Even if your child stays, you are grieving some of the things that we just talked about. A change, a shift, in what you can and can't do, what you have to do and what you want to do and don't get to do. I mean, you're going to grieve, and you're going to grieve your child's loss with them, because you're going to experience with them all the things that they're going through. And so I think one of the first things that I would say is to become aware, and then also to be kind. And you know, last week we had Susan Packwood, and the whole message was about taking care of yourself. Like, people who are caregivers, they have to fill up, right? I mean, you have to do that. So when we're, you know, through this whole journey, learning to care for yourself, learning to acknowledge your own feelings, being aware of your child, acknowledging their feelings, those are super important in the grieving process. Anything you want to add to that? I think just self-care, getting exercise, getting outside, recognizing that while you may have lost some community, you've probably gained some others if you just kind of maybe open your eyes to it.
Yes.
Even if it's on social media. No one can, I mean, you can find a Facebook group in a heartbeat.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just be aware of what your kind of group you're getting into. But is there anything that, I mean, those are some biggies, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage them to ask for help and to accept help.
Yeah.
So if you have people in your life that are willing to come around you, even, I mean, it's helpful if they understand you and understand your situation, but even if they're just willing to be in your life and accept you, accept their help. You know, when somebody says, can I do something for you? Yes, you can. Or can I bring you a meal? Or, you know, that is part of self-help and self-care also. So ask for help when you feel like you're drowning, whether it's in physical stuff or emotional stuff, and then accept the help that's offered.
That's really good.
That was a big thing. I had a hard time accepting when people were like, can we do this for you? Can we bring you this? Can we, you know, whatever it was.
The answer? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And then again, yes. And you'll be surprised at how wonderful that makes another person feel.
Yes.
They're being a part. They may be one of those people that says, I could never do that, but I could bring you a meal.
Yes.
You know, I could pay my housekeeper to come over and clean your house.
Yep.
How awesome is that?
Don't deny them their gift.
Yeah, it's really good.
That's their gift.
So you're not alone. You're not alone. You're this is a grieving community. And so thank you, Jennifer. Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having
joining us. Thank you for listening, for staying all the way till the end of the whole podcast and getting this just great. This is great advice, and I hope it brings comfort. Don't forget, download your Wisdom from the Well card. Those are, I need to send a picture. I've got them hanging up all over my office. I'll get a picture for you on that on social media. Make sure you go to the Mom as Well website. There are a lot of resources there. There are books there, and there are blogs. Each one of these podcasts, I've written additional information to go along with it. So if you go to Mom as Well, click on podcast, you'll see there's a blog with each episode. If you want to receive those each week, subscribe at momaswell.com, and you'll get my blog, and you'll get a link to each Wisdom from the Well card to download, as well as a link to watch the video on YouTube or to listen to the audio version on the podcast platforms. So have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Mama's well.
Yes, she is.